Hello, everybody. Um, I hope you're all doing well. Um, and if you're watching this later, I hope you're doing well later. I'm happy to be here and introduce you to somebody who is really special to me and who I think we can all learn a lot from, Gustavo. I met him because we wrote Little Magic together. And so, without further ado, I will welcome him in.
Hey,
Hello.
hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, thanks. It's a good Monday. Thanks for having me on your show. Nice to see you.
Do you like Mondays or like I feel like people either hate Mondays or really like Mondays.
No, I think it's hard. And I just had this realization the other day because on Sundays, like Sunday evenings especially, I just start getting really anxious.
Yeah.
And it's this thing is like, and I realize it's from this like traumatic thing of when I was little. I went to Mexican prep school in Mexico City with all like their rich snobby kids, and so when Sunday would come around, and I'd be like, oh my god, I have to go back to that place, and so that stuck with me forever. So I was like, why do I keep like hating Mondays? And so now I've tried to change it up where like I do something that like I want to do on Mondays, or like I do something fun to kind of change the Monday stigmatite the stigma of Mondays.
Isn't it so crazy that like your brain still thinks like I have to go to school on Monday like
Yeah,
20
or
years?
something like after something it's time to get going. It's Monday, or it's like that kind of thing because we're all instilled in like that part. Like that's why they built the week like that.
Yeah.
And start
I
you
know.
into production.
Yeah, I literally turn my Sundays into my Mondays. Like I do everything I need to do on Sunday. I'm so busy, and then on Mondays I chill because I'm
Yeah,
just like I'm not giving in to society
smart.
pressure.
That's why we became musicians. Screw
Exactly, exactly.
you, Monday.
So I'm gonna start off by asking like some rapid fire questions in 30 seconds so we can get to know you a little bit better. So I'm gonna set
Okay.
my timer. I got homesick. So I'm like homesick right now because I'm in LA. So I put like my view from my
Yeah,
parents' house in the
I was
background.
gonna say that's a pretty nice view.
Okay, here we go. Timer 1 minute 30 seconds. Okay, ready? Are you
Mhm.
ready? Okay. What is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
Cold shower
How do you like your coffee?
with cream and sugar.
Your favorite thing to do when you're alone?
Uh, Whistle.
Whistle. Okay.
What?
Do you think with your head more or your heart more?
My heart more.
Are you a city person or a nature person?
Nature person.
Introvert or extrovert?
Introvert.
What is your love language?
Is acts of kindness.
A place you want to vacation that you've never been?
Ooh, Tahiti
What is your go-to Uber Eats order?
is definitely Mediterranean food from
Is there a
Sota.
specific restaurant?
Yeah, it's Sota. I think I have like a couple like gold medals from this
Okay,
place.
that sounds really good. Okay, an experience that you'll never forget.
Meeting my fiance.
I want to hear that story. Okay, your ideal day off.
Good. A deal day off is definitely going to the beach down to Malibu and hanging out, reading a book. It's always a good time to connect with the ocean. Just get my skin good. Very good. Yeah, we did good.
There was one more
There's one
question,
more. Oh, okay. Which one is it?
but you did really good. What song do I need to listen to right now? Is there
Oh,
a song you recommend?
yeah. I'm like a sucker for like good pop songs, and I've been listening to this artist Ash,
Mm-hmm.
and she has a cool song, like "Shower with My Clothes On," and a couple other on the EP, but it's like really good pop, like, but it's taking it like from like a '70s kind of twist. to it. And so she's taking like at least cool like 70 studio influences and then kind of modernizing it, and the songwriting is really good.
That sounds cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check that out. Ash, like A S
ASHE.
ASHE. Okay, I
Yeah.
would have gotten that wrong.
It's more like, cause I like, and like, you know, when you do start songwriting and you do session work, it's kind of that part where like, oh, who would like, you know, you listen to something like, oh, I wish I would have been there that day, because it's like something so good and so catchy that you get
Yeah.
like that good jealousy.
Yeah.
And of course you have to go and stalk like who produced this, who wrote it, and then you're like 16 people on this track, and you're like, all right, finding who's like all of them, and like, so I nerd out a little bit, but that's kind of the deal.
That's cool though. Yeah. So talking about music, I first of all, hi everybody. I see like people are joining and commenting. So hi,
Awesome.
thank you for joining. But what is like your story? Because I don't know. Like I don't know how you got started in music. First of all, like what would you identify yourself as? You're like an artist, singer, songwriter,
Yeah,
producer, kind of
definitely a song and dance man. Um, and I started playing guitar when I was 12, 13, but I came from a family of guitar players. My dad played guitar, my uncle and grandpa. So I have this joke that if it wasn't for the guitar, like the Galindos wouldn't procreate, because it's just something that we all like ended up playing. And so for me, the guitar was like this natural instrument that was always around. And so in Mexico on weekends, like on Sundays, you'd have to do like family get-togethers, and then after lunch, usually, you know, and the tequilas get brought out, and then the guitars would get brought out, and it was just cool because my dad was like a kid of the '70s, '60s, so he had Beatles songs and Cat Stevens songs and Joni Mitchell songs, and he'd throw in Mexican folk songs and mariachi songs, and so growing up around that, it was just kind of the environment. And then I slowly discovered like that I had like a good voice. I saw La Bamba when I was about probably 7, and then I was like, that's what I want to do, I think. And I would watch like Mexican singing variety shows, and like my dad would tell me that I would get really excited and I'd have to hide under the table because I would just feel so much energy from what they were transmitting on the screen. There's just something very visceral that like just called to me, I think. And so when I was 12, 13, my mom came to my brother and I, and she's like, do you want to play piano or guitar? And it's like, you don't have a choice. It's one or the other. Because she was that kind of mom. And we're like, guitar. She's like, okay, but it has to be classical guitar. So we had to put our electric guitar playing dreams aside. But it actually worked out really well because that's where I got a lot of my fingering technique from. And it just made me a better all around player in the long run. So I definitely recommend starting with classical guitar. And then from there started writing songs, and then you discover that like that girl that you have a crush on, all of a sudden has a crush on you, but it's because you play guitar. You know, like those things like, so the wheels started turning, and I was like, oh, this is like discovering some sort of superpower for this little kind of chubby introverted kid that would observe a lot of the time. And I think I learned about the power of observation at an early age, you know, how to stay quiet and watch a story evolve around you. Someone's always going to say something interesting or say something that might start a song, or you might witness some bit of human interaction that will cause you to think about something or maybe generate the story from there. And it's just all from like just people watching or, you know, overhearing conversations. So I think that's like one of my big first lessons in songwriting was learning the power of observing, and then from there I was just slowly crafting songs and getting better. And by the time I got to in college, I was in like a little rock band because we were all trying to be the Strokes back then, or the Vines, or like those bands. And so we had like that kind of indie flair. And then we decided to stay in LA afterwards to try our luck out. And that was a good experience because that's where I learned, you know, about how to promote, how to book a show, how to get your merch, how to convince people to come out and pay for parking, and then the show, and then for drinks, and then a T-shirt. And so like you learn all the art forms of like what it takes besides being good and singing in key and taking voice lessons and all that stuff. So and around that same time I had all these songs in Spanish that I was like, what do I do with them? And so I I like called my mom and my dad, and I was like, don't give me any birthday presents or Christmas presents for like the next, I don't know how many years, but can you help me pay for an EP of these songs that I want to record? And they're like, okay, sure. So I think it was like $3,000, something like that they gave me to record these 5 songs. And I didn't really think any of this demo and these kind of this EP that I'd done, and I started showing it to people, and people started liking it. And on a secretariat where I worked at the time, I worked at a PR firm, and she had a boyfriend who was a manager, and he liked it. He gave it to a friend of his at MTV that he liked it, and so it was like a really interesting organic kind of progression of people that were liking the Spanish EP that I thought I'd done for my family, and eventually the EP ended up on the desk of this producer named Gustavo Santolaya, and he had a little label called Surco Records, and he is kind of well known because he's kind of like the Rick Rubin of the Latin world, where he finds a lot of artists and like has kind of like a Midas touch kind of thing, where a lot of like great Latin artists like Juanes, Café Tacuba, this band called Molotov, were all kind of like Mexican staples, international stars now. And so he would find them and produce them. And so I guess one day they were cleaning out their office of all the demos that they would get, and they came across mine, and they liked one song, they liked the next song, and then they ended up sending me an email and asking me if they would like to meet. And that's kind of how I started my solo artist career. And that's they signed to Universal Latin Records, and then I put an album out in 2011, and it got nominated for a Grammy in 2012. And then from there, it was like a progression of living in Mexico and putting out albums, and being on a label, then being dropped, and then figuring out how to become an independent artist. And so even till today, then figuring out like all the other sides of becoming a producer and songwriter. And so that's kind of like the short story of how I got to where I am right now. Yeah. So it's a weird, complicated thing, but
no, it is. Like, that's the thing. I don't think people understand like how much artists have to go through to get to where they are, and that's super cool. I didn't know that. And it's always, I feel like it's always the things that you least expect that you just do for yourself that like are the things that end up being the biggest opportunities in your life. Like, even with Little Magic, like we just like you gave me, like you sent me that song, and then like I came in and we worked on it, but like we didn't expect really, like we didn't know what was going to happen. We were just like enjoying ourselves, and then like I find myself at like a huge venue in Mexico performing that song, and it's just like you never know what's going to give you those opportunities, and like that's why you just gotta like keep going and keep going. And
for me is like it took a while to learn, but it's about being in service to the song and being in service of the whatever's coming through. And it's like our job as songwriters to kind of put our personal egos away and let our kind of musical egos take over. Where it's real about, okay, is this good enough for this part? Is that like the right line for that right part? Am I saying this in a powerful enough way? Is it fitting with what's going on? Is it hooky enough? Like all those things that we go through creatively to create like this little, like these 3 minutes of bliss, eventually but it takes a lot of crafting. And I think for me, it was like that learning of how to get out of the way, but then also how to be able to translate what's going on in your head and in your heart onto into the DAW or onto the guitar or onto like the melody or to the lyrics. So it was fascinating because like I started that song as like this pop song, Little Magic was basically like a sugary pop song, and it had like a little upbeat chorus and everything. And so it was cool to see it transform when I sent it to you, when you came into the studio to work on it. And we kind of like basically stripped it down and turned it into a much more like cool R&B feeling song, which was like a really cool slow jam. And it just like and it really showed me like it's like, oh, this is even cooler. So for me, it was cool to have it transform from one thing and to give it to you, and then you catalyze it into something really cool that is what the song is today. And then obviously finding Sabino to sing on it, and like this whole progression of how it's done, and then from you singing it this weekend on stage in front of 5,000 people, that's like it's like for me it was an honor because like that's the first time I've seen something that I've created go all the way for another artist, because usually it's my song, you know, usually I'm the
Yeah.
one that created it, I produce it, and then I'll go sing it, you know. So this was like a whole other much more cool experience to see that as well, and to be able to create that with you was such a fun time.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that like you you liked it because I changed it a lot, you know, and I really like that term like musical ego. Like that's really interesting because I think there's a lot of like, you know, people saying, "Oh, don't put ego into the music. Like don't put any kind of, you know, it's just art and you have to be free." And I think that's like true, but then there's definitely another side of it where it's like you also have to be like constructive and change things and like have an idea of like, nah, this just isn't that good or this needs to change. But
Oh
it
yeah.
shouldn't come from like a personal gain perspective. It should be come from like a musical gain perspective of like, this is the quality of music, only quality of music that I'm going to accept that I'm creating in this moment. And so
Mhm.
it's like a really interesting way to describe that because I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it is true, because obviously like you have to have some sort of something that's driving you to create that part, but also it's like your own taste involved in it as well, and so yeah, it's true. That's like the tricky part. I think for me it was being in a band taught me really that art of being cool with listening to other ideas and other voices coming in. Because you know, before when you're in a band and like you know you're 20 something and you're basically like a Neanderthal with a cell phone, like most 20-year-old dudes are, and it was like, well, you don't like my lyric, well, I wrote it, like you don't know what you're talking about, bro. And then like, no, you know what you're talking about, blah blah blah. So it become like these band battles, and then like you'd leave afterwards. And it took me a little bit to realize like, oh, everyone just wants the same thing, which everyone just wants the song to be as good as it can be. And so it's for me, even if I write a lyric or if I write something, it's like it should be the opposite. I should be coming like, do you think, guys, is this good enough? Like, what do you think about this line or like this part? Like, we should work on it. So it kind of changed my way of like how I approached working with other people, and like learning that if the goal is the same, then it's okay to like to surrender a little bit and be not so resistant to having someone suggest something or trying something, you know, because it's better to try a whole bunch of things because that'll lead you to that eventual place where like, oh yeah, we finally found the lick or the riff or the lyric, but because you were patient and you went down the road of possibility.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. And I definitely like see that in working with you that comes out. How about like, I know you have an album coming out.
Mhm.
So when you're writing your own stuff, is that more to you like, do you like to co-write for your own stuff or do you just like to write by yourself?
I usually like to start the idea by myself. Like
Mm.
the something will come to me and I'll record it, and then I'll flesh out the idea, and I'll kind of maybe get a verse and then a chorus idea to sort of like give something to go, and then um, depending on the song, if I'm able to work through it. But I like taking it with other co-writers. Like for instance, on this album, I wrote a lot of the songs with my friend Shane Alexander, who's a producer songwriter, and he's like a real songsmith kind of guy where he really gets down to the details of the lyric and the right thing, and to like you know and to fit it with the melody just perfectly. So for me, it was a great exercise to kind of like work with someone that was a little more like laser and uh, much more like Virgo, and that like let's go through the details, because I'll be like, oh, I think it's good enough. Like I just want to sing it, you know, because I want to just
Yeah.
like and do it. And he's like, no, let's like find it. So it was really powerful, and I like it because it's like you just get another set of ears to like objectively help you create that thing, you know. And I think for me, it's always like I want to work with people that are better than me, so that
Yeah.
I can steal from them and take all their stuff, you know, because like that's like the part where it's like, oh, like you know, you have to like kind of, for me at least, like approach everything really humbly and be like, I have no nothing. But I
Yeah.
know I have this certain skill set. I know like that. I know what like in my heart is a good song or what's a good something that's driving me to do this. But I can always like use a little help to ground it. So I'm all for like collaboration and finding the right things to say. And then for me, it's like if a song comes naturally and I write it for myself, like at the same time I'll rewrite it a couple of times or rework it now just because I've learned from Shane how to go about doing it. So for me, it's just getting better with each song and with each record.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. Like I just want to keep learning and keep growing, and I think a lot of that comes from like accepting yourself and knowing your strengths and like being proud of your work, because I think like a lot of people, they don't keep growing and learning because they're still wanting to hear from someone like you're good enough. But
Mm-hmm.
once you like can recognize I'm good enough, it's like, okay, I'm good enough, so now how can I be better, you know? And there's so much like joy that comes out of that and like growth, and it's such a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
So your new album, I want to hear about it. I've heard one of the songs and it literally brought me to tears, so that was a good start. But do you have like a name for it, a date for it, like a concept?
Yeah, right now it's getting into the mixing phase. It's definitely going to come out next year, and right now I'm kind of just shopping it around to seeing if I can get some help distributing or marketing, which would be awesome. But the it's interesting. My last album I wrote 10, 11 songs, so 9 songs in Spanish and 2 songs in English. And in this album is the exact opposite, where it's 9 songs in English and 2 songs in Spanish. So it ended up working out, and it's like this part where I like there's much more room now to be a bicultural and bilingual artist.
Mm-hmm.
You're not pigeonholed into just being language, where I think it's just the genre of music that you sing should be what matters, and then whatever language you sing it in is for that language. But you as an artist, like that's always taken me a little bit of time to figure out. But that's why I'm kind of waiting to put out next year. But the title of it is Between Two Worlds. It's kind of this idea because I live basically between Mexico City and Los Angeles, and I've been between 2 countries my whole life and 2 cultures, and I'm always kind of between both and seeing things that people from Mexico perhaps don't see about themselves, or the objectivity of being a Mexican American living in the States. And so a lot of my musical influences, is, in fact, come through that. And this album really reflects this kind of sound that I have, which is kind of I call it chilangringo, which is chilangos from Mexico City, and then gringos my other side. So it's like this play on words, which is basically kind of like a Cali Mex sound, which I really enjoy.
That's really interesting. Was it hard for you at first to kind of like find your place in in either? Like when you moved to LA, did you feel like you immediately belonged here, or did you like get homesick?
Definitely like moving between like Mexico City and LA was always interesting because like when I would come here to the States, I would feel like I'd have to like I felt more Mexican, you know, because like you identify more like with the people or with the food. And then when I'm in Mexico, I'm like, because I don't speak with a perfect accent, like I'm American basically to them. So that part was always kind of figuring out how to fit in. I definitely struggled with it like at an early age. Like how do I become a good Mexican, or how am I becoming a good U.S. citizen? And I kind of had just to settle on being a good human being in the end. Um, and from there, like, and that's kind of where I use music for to help and to help guide people and to just raise vibration.
That's beautiful, because I think that's so true. Is like, you know, that's like the bottom line, is like just be a good person. Like who cares like where you're from or what you do or what you look like if you're a good person, then you care about people and you take care of yourself. Like that's really all should matter. And I think that when you travel and when you feel like you don't belong somewhere, like a lot of artists do, it's like that becomes your identity, and your identity is solely based on who you are as a person. It kind of forces you to like really think about, who am I, what do I want, like what matters to me. um and like I can tell with you like that you have figured that stuff out. And I think going through the industry, which I know personally is kind of a shit show, like, yeah, I see you come out of the other. You're so humble and so, you know, just still about the music and about the art. And I think a lot of people lose that. So that's like really amazing to see. And I know like you're passionate about mental health, like so am I, and healing, and you've found ways to use music with mental health, which I'm sure like helps you to see that side of music. But it's super cool. So I'd love to like for you to talk a little bit about how you use music to heal people. Yeah.
Yeah, it was super interesting during the pandemic. Well, I've been like collecting Tibetan bowls and singing bowls and kind of different musical instruments for a little bit, and that was kind of like a little hobby I had. And then during pandemic, I realized that people wanted, ways to relax and to calm themselves or to like get rid of their anxiety and stress. And obviously, music's a big part of that. But I kind of stumbled upon like this kind of different section of music therapy and meditation music, and it kind of opened up my eyes. Like, oh, music can be much more than just a 3 minute and 3 minute and 30-second pop song. It can be a whole different, all these different worlds, and you can add in all these different textures and voices and things. So it became super fun for me to explore. And then I picked up Native American flute as well. So now I became a flute player, and then I became a bowl player, and I kind of started this music therapy little company called Sonic Healing. And so as part of my thing, I do like sound baths around town at different yoga studios, and I also have started going to like retirement communities for senior citizens and like playing sounding for them, because like music therapy and this is so important for everyone, especially when you're in your like your third age kind of thing. So it's just for another way for me to be of service with music and to use music to help people. And for me, it's super fun because it's like jazz in the sense you just don't have to play all the right notes. You can just kind of like bang on some bowls, but it just sounds really pretty. And it's also doing something on a very molecular level, where these sounds and frequencies are finding imperfections or things that could be wrong or stress or anxieties that have their own frequencies as well, and kind of annihilating those frequencies. And it's very interesting to see how people feel afterwards. And it's like it's kind of an interesting thing where like at a show, like I want people to leave excited and pumped, and at these I want people to leave like knocked out. So I know when I do a good job when people are like passed out for 5 minutes after I'm done with a sound bath or something. So it's just, for me, it's all just discovering like all the different avenues that music has to help and to heal and to do something beautiful for us, which I think is why human beings were given art in the first place, which was to evolve and to seek other meanings and to look beyond ourselves. So it's kind of an interesting way that connects us back to a source. This is always constantly like this kind of torus thing, which is always in flux and going in and out, which is why trends and things will come in and out all the time, and things will come back again, because that creativity is like that, always flowing. Yeah. So then I like get into metaphysics, and we'll get real deep. But that's kind of my meditation music.
No, that's really cool. I think it's so interesting, like the pumped energy thing, because I feel like, you can go, and some people can go for longer than others in their lives, just pumped, like running on adrenaline, running on dopamine. Like they don't realize anything's wrong. They don't realize they have any trauma, nothing, because everything's exciting and they can just, this is next, and then this is next, and then this is next. And it's like, then you get to a point where like for me, I got really sick. Like I was having horrible like stomach pains, and so that's when I got to the point where I couldn't just like find things to like enjoy anymore. And that's when like I realized like there's a lot of stuff that I need to heal. And it took me like not having that kind of youthful adrenaline and pumping me anymore to realize it. And I think that's something like people don't really realize. They're like, well, why do I need to meditate? Why do I need to like, do these things? And it's like, you don't even realize what traumas you have until you're like kind of in a place where you can sit with them. And like, it's like interesting because I feel like a lot of times it takes people to get to a certain point to like realize they need help.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if like incorporating sound healing or meditation like earlier in your life can kind of prevent you from even ever getting to that breaking point where like you really really need something,
Yeah.
you know?
I think so, because it's like I think what happens is in our society we're forced always to go out. It's like, here I am presenting myself, here I am, photos on Instagram, here I am, this show, here I am doing this. And so the sound bowls and the meditation low is like returns it back into you. So you're able to kind of quiet down and like assess things and integrate all the outward stuff that's going on. Because if you just continue to go pouring out constantly, it's going to drain you and you're just going to end up running on the fumes of whatever this thing is. And that's how people get caught into that hamster wheel of I've got to keep going. I'm just got to keep, and then they burn out. So unless you're like doing the balanced thing of going inwards, which is where like the sound healing and the meditation really go hand in hand, like it enables you to come to a grounding place and to kind of drop into your into some stillness and into some peace and some quiet and into some like reflection, which is obviously the most important part, because that will bring around self-awareness. The self-awareness will then bring around a assessment of who you are and where you're at, kind of thing. And then from there, you can decide actions on what best and which ways are the best ways to follow that you might need, And I think that's when like you can get answers. And a lot of people with my sound baths get downloads. They get like things will come to them because they're open and the frequencies have like cleared off all the static or all the things that aren't necessary anymore. So people can get a little more clear answers. And so they go hand in hand, but it's definitely important to use it to center and to come into yourself.
Yeah. Especially I think because there's like so much information and we're constantly fed information all the time. So it's like even more important to kind of like detox. Everybody talks about detoxing with food, but like detoxing your mind and
Yeah.
like all
Yeah, I
what
actually like had like this idea like that I should go to like music studios and like sound bath the producers to like get their minds like, because they're just in there all day, boom, 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 working on the same track. So your brain, your ears, like everything needs a break once in a while. So that's like where like the cool instruments and like frequencies come into play. Like cleanse the palate, so to say, like a sorbet between meals.
yeah. Because like creativity requires a lot of time and space to just kind of like sit and think. My therapist always tells me that.
Yeah.
It's like,
And then also like changing the way you think about things like depression, right? Like depression really is like should be deep rest, depress. So it's like that part where like, like, oh, I'm depressed, I should be out there doing so. It's like, no, like you're like in that space, it's okay to respect it and to be quiet or to not, to hunker down for a couple of days. I think there's like this part where we reward the doer and not the thinker or not the planner kind of thing. And sometimes as a creative person, like I need to probably not create anything for a couple of days. I just need to like sit and stew on things, And so it's kind of like giving yourself what you need to be able to create and forgetting about how other people do it, Because I know guys that like write like 5 songs a day, and I'm like, I don't know how you do it. I'm just really just wanting to write one good song a week or a month,
yeah.
and I'm happy.
Yeah, and everybody's different, but I think what you said is true, is respecting what you need. And honestly, like, too, what you said is so true about depression, because like I used to really be mentally like ill when I would get depressed and I'd feel like there's something wrong with me, or I need to go change this. I need to go fix this. Like I need to figure out why I'm depressed and then make all of the necessary changes to not be depressed. Meanwhile, I'm very low on energy and like can barely wake up in the morning, and
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. Like maybe it's just trying to tell you that you need to relax, you need to decompress, you need to detox your mind, and that's perfectly fine. Like you deserve the space to do that. So I think it's like a really good message. And I have one more question for you, kind of along these lines. But if you could, this is like The final question. If you could tell your younger self, like obviously you're so knowledgeable now. If you could tell your younger self like one piece of advice, let's say like your 18, 17, 18-year-old self, what would you tell him?
I would tell him. I would definitely like be tell him to be consistent in his work, because like I've realized that over the years, like just the keeping at something, like is like an active, like if you know to kind of making that choice and going for it.
Mm.
Because I would always get to the point where like I think I've got it, and then like I'll be like, oh, but look at that shiny thing over there, and then like I'd go to the shiny thing over there, you know. Especially in relationships, I'd be like, oh, this person loves me, so I must go and do what this person and make and be happy in this world, kind of thing. And I would forget what I was being, doing, kind of stuff, like for myself. And so like I would lose the consistency. And I think that's been like the ebb and flow for my career, and I can definitely recommend that for people who are starting out. It's really about sticking to it, and doing like the songs and putting in the work and not being afraid of a little bit of a controversy or like a little bit of stickiness, because eventually like it'll wear off. So I think that's my big thing that I would tell that poor young guy that is about to embark into a world of interesting things.
Is there any way that you've learned to like deal with that consistency? Because I have that problem too. Like I get scared of putting my all into something, and what if it fails?
Yeah,
Oh, I could do that or that other thing. So
yeah, it's definitely the small bites helps for sure, because like if I'm like get too thinking about something too long, I'm like, oh my goodness, what's gonna happen? And so it's really about like the little things. So like for me is like the sticking to like a little bit of a schedule and something. Like I've started waking up at 5, and like we're exercising, then I do like some writing, and then I'm dad for like 3 hours until the nanny comes, and then then I can go back to work, kind of thing. But like if I don't get like that time in the morning kind of stuff, like it just throws the whole day off, because then I'll have to find somewhere to work out. And so it keeps, it's just like how to keep yourself consistent, and
like
just takes a little bit of discipline and a little bit of love. And that's like the recipe for to commit to something.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Like I also find that like stopping when you feel overwhelmed, like
Mm-hmm.
not keeping going and like giving yourself time to think and process also like avoids that, because you're like consistently every morning telling yourself like, okay, this is the reality of the situation, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
still going to choose to do it, instead of like reluctantly going hard and then realizing like, oh, I don't even know if I wanted to do that. Like, you know what I mean?
It's true. It's true. Yeah, but it's definitely like the small pieces. It's definitely a lot easier to like stay onto something, because it's just like all we have really is this time right now, this moment, and then like it's another little moment that just happened right now, and then this next moment. So it's kind of that kind of space where, I really love Ram Dass and Alan Watts and kind of these '60s philosophers. And like because it kind of always like the first time that you could get recordings of them talking in their like lectures. So there's a fun little tip for songwriters to go and listen to those, because they say some really cool things, and you get a cool lyric line out of it and some good wisdom as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So I would love if you would sing us one of your
Sure.
songs off your new album coming out next year. I
Exactly.
think I can like just leave you so I'm not awkwardly
Staring.
here.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'm going to remove myself from the stream, and then when you're done, I'm gonna end the stream. So this is me signing off. But um, before I leave, where
Yeah.
can everybody find you? Like Instagram, Facebook, Spotify?
Yeah. So on Instagram, I'm Gustavo _ Galindo. And I believe, and then my website is Gustavo Galindo Music. So you guys can find me there. And yeah, and thanks so much for having me on your amazing show. And yeah, and then this song is called Broken Things. And I
Okay.
wrote it because I saw this a meme or something on Instagram about Japanese pottery, and how in Japanese they like when something's broken in Japan, they'll put the pottery back together with gold. And it kind of jump started this idea of how we treat broken things in our culture compared to other cultures, and I think especially people as well. So it kind of became a, um, a very cool little song that I'm really like the lyrics of.
Amazing. I'm excited to hear it. Go ahead, and I'll put his Instagram in the comments, so look out for that.
All right. In Japan, they fix broken things with gold. If it's true, then I am worth so much more than I was before. In Japan, they fix broken things with gold. In California, they don't like you getting old. Once the years begin to show, you can't remain within the fold. In California, they don't like you getting old. And all these broken things that were always so quick to throw away, don't you know that they're worth more once the polish starts to fade? Like the broken hearted souls spend their nights out in the cold. Don't be so quick to pass along the blame. And just be glad it's not you out in the rain. So find it easy to let a good thing go. They can cast it all aside and just keep moving on down the road. So find it easy to let a good thing go. And some surrender at the first sign of trouble. Oh, afraid to step outside the comfort of the bubble. Some surrender at the first sign of pain. And all these broken things that were always so quick to throw away. And don't you know that there was more once the polish starts to fade? Like the broken hearted souls sleeping out there in the cold. Don't be so quick to pass along the blame. Just be glad it's not you out in the rain. In the dew, in the dew. Yeah, and all these broken things that we're always so quick to throw away. Don't you know that there was more once the polish starts to fade? Like the broken hearted souls sleeping out there in the cold. Don't be so quick to pass along the way. Yeah, just be glad it's not you out in the rain. Just be glad it's not you out in the rain.
I'm coming back because it was so good. I wanted to say it. I put my headphones on to listen to it.
Oh, thank you so much.
That is so beautiful. It's such a beautiful message too. I will be waiting anxiously for this album to come out. Thank you so much for joining. It really means a lot to me, and I love talking to you as always. But
yeah,
yes, best of luck with everything, and everybody go follow him and listen to his album.
Thank you so much, and everyone, thanks so much. Yeah, I can't wait to write more songs with you, and thanks for having me on your show.
Well, thank you. Have an amazing rest of your week, and everyone else have an amazing rest of your week.
That's good. Bye, guys.
The album comes, someone asked when the album comes out. Last thing I'm going to say. It comes out next year, but he doesn't have a date yet. But follow him at Gustavo Galindo on Instagram for all updates. Bye, guys.